Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning blog. My name is Melisa Galasso, and today we're going to talk about the OMB proposal to update uniform guidance. For those of you who are on our mailing list and receive our Genuine Learning newsletter, you got an alert last week when it came out. However, we did want to give a video explanation of some of those changes. If you are not already on our newsletter, you can sign up at GalassoLearningSolutions.com and just go to our blog website and you can sign up there. And this way you get the alerts as they come out. Otherwise, you can always get them on a weekly basis from our blog itself. So what happened last week? Well, on October 5th, the Office of Management and Budget made a proposal. Now, we knew this was coming because 2 CFR 200-109 requires them to update the uniform guidance every 5 years. And the original uniform guidance was issued in 2013. So there were a few things that were sort of needing to be addressed in the process. And unlike last time, in addition to CFR 200, there are other sections of the Code of Federal Regulations that they're updating at the same time. So the Universal Identifier and System for Award Management, we're also fondly referred to as SAM, a little bit around never contract with the enemy, which is a federal law, and some guidance around non-procurement debarment. So as we look at this, these are some of the other sections that got updated. But when we look at the uniform guidance updates, probably the biggest one everyone wants to know is what was this proposal going to be? Many of us hoped for a little higher, but they are proposing to raise the single audit threshold from $750,000 to $1 million. And so this is an interesting one. This would reduce the cost and complexity for those who are receiving less than $1 million. But obviously that's still going to capture a lot of entities given we have trillions of dollars of federal funding right now out there, thanks to a lot of the COVID-related money, as well as ARPA, the Infrastructure Act, et cetera. So this would provide some relief. I think many of us were hoping for just a little bit more of an increase. However, I will talk about it at the very end. They are asking if this should be tied to some type of inflation number or something else as a consideration for the future. So not for this proposal itself, an update, but more that's something that we should be looking at. Other things that are important in here, the definition of equipment. So right now it is the lower of the entity's threshold for capitalization, or $5,000. This would increase it to $10,000. And so again, making more things supplies as opposed to equipment. And obviously equipment and real property is a key compliance requirement in the single audit world. The other big change that we see here is really around terminology. We do refer to this in the beginning, we referred to this Uniform Grant Guidance, or UGG. Over the years, we have kind of narrowed it down to this uniform guidance. But the concept of grants has always been somewhat difficult because the uniform guidance applies to more than just grants. And so they're talking about updating the language around Chapter 1 to replace the concept of grants and agreements with federal financial assistance, which would incorporate all of the various types of federal financial assistance. They also are proposing some changes with respect to terminology. That was one of the key questions they asked earlier this year when they put it out for a request for information. They put out an RFI and asked what types of things should they look at. And one of the ones they got a lot of feedback was verbiage and terminology. And so no surprise here, some of the ones that are a little bit more confusing: continuation funding, for-profit organization, especially when we look at shuttered venue operating grants or provider relief funds that can have single audits for those for-profit organizations. So making some changes there. It would allow Indian tribes to follow their own procurement policies and procedures, given obviously the concept that tribal governments are like states, and states already are allowed to do this. And so that sort of expansion would make sense there. Removing the prohibitions on using geographic preference requirements. Currently, the uniform guidance says that you can't say, hey, I'm in the state of Florida. This is the state of Florida is passing this money through, and so you need to give it, priority for procurement contracts to those who are going to be in the state of Florida. That's actually prohibited today. This would remove that prohibition for states to require or provide a preference for geography. We already have women and minority owned. They are adding veteran owned businesses to the types of business that they would like to see more contracts go to and to give consideration for. And then they are including a requirement for pass-through entities to confirm that potential subrecipients are not suspended, debarred, et cetera, similar to what we do for entities that are receiving contracts under the uniform guidance and the vendor relationships. Another change is proposing to raise the de minimis rate from what is currently 10% to 15%. 10% is very low. It is sort of a difficult, ask of people. So it is simpler, right? You just get to take 10% of your modified total direct costs. But when you do that, it is definitely lower than if you had taken the time to negotiate an indirect cost rate. And so they are increasing it from 10%, or proposing to increase it from 10% to 15%. They have never done this, so the uniform guidance technically requires that all indirect cost rates should be publicly available on a government website. They never said what website or who is going to be responsible for it. They just said that we should have this. However, we've never figured out how to do it, so they are removing that requirement from the uniform guidance. Impact should be pretty little. But as I said, those are the big items that most people are interested when we look at the changes in here. There are other ones, and we've given you a link in the notes if you are interested in taking a look at the red line versions of what changes are being made. However, what I thought was really interesting is they did ask about our opinions on the future. So while they are not making these proposals, they are interested if this is something that they should look into. And the first one is establishing specific audit requirements for for-profit entities. I'm surprised they're asking that because they got a lot of feedback in the RFI saying, yes, it'd be nice, again, if we have all this federal funding going to entities who are getting these types of audits, be nice to have some guidance around them. And then establishing some type of automatic adjustment for thresholds, right? So whether there's inflation or triggering event, and could we have that as opposed to having to wait every 5 years for an increase in the threshold? So if that's something you're interested in, definitely let them know. Again, they're not proposing that for right now, but they are asking if that's something that they should consider, look into, research, et cetera. So if you are interested, the comments are due by December 4th, 2023, which is, again, typically your 60-day comment period, so no surprise there. And obviously, you would use regulations.gov to provide that information to OMB. All right, so that is a wrap on the Genuine Learning blog for this week. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope to see you on a future blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.